Okay. Hello. Welcome back, our YouTube viewers. Today, we're in for a little bit of a different video. Um, as some of you may know, recently we had an addition to the RU Old Gens kind of catalog that we have. Advanced RU did not exist until exactly a year ago. And today I'm sitting down with kind of two of the founders of that tier, Amity and LpZ, to kind of just talk about the road that ADV RU has come from its inception to some of the tours that have happened, and now to its latest inclusion in RU World Cup. So before we hop into things, Amity, LpZ, how about y'all just do a little introduction?
Hello, I am Amity. I've been involved in Advanced RU since its conception. I've been priorly involved in stuff like Advanced UU, which eventually led me to the creation of Advanced RU. And I've been around in the advanced scene for a little over a year and a half now, and I'm proud to looking forward to more.
Okay, hi, I'm LpZ. Uh, sorry, I gotta yell. Sorry. Anyways, yeah, just like Amity, I've been in the ADV community for a while now. I think since 2021, I think, and
Wow.
that also gave me motivation to start ADVRU alongside Amity. So yeah, and we also found like there were way too many how can I say obsolete months in UU, so we had that idea.
I think
Yeah.
I think the first conception idea of Advanced RU was I was just randomly talking in GSC cord, you pinged me and was like, Advanced RU. What? Advanced RU. And I was like, you know what? Screw it. I'm down. I mean, there's a lot of shit mons in UU, so yeah, absolutely. And so our first idea was going off viability or usage stats. And I think the problem with usage stats is that well, it's an old gen lower tier. And also, I think viability is inherently tied to lower usage. Like like for DBBRU, for instance, if we did that off usage, Dugtrio would have been RU. But I but it's a completely decent mod in the tier, just no one uses it that much. And I think that's why I think usage stats are a little bit misleading to what mons are actually RU grounds. So I think we did the safe bet. We just did viability rankings. But by that point we didn't have quite an updated VR yet. This was like uh this was before we settled the advanced UVR with Arcanine and Ninjask Jump Love because they were formerly just dropped in from BL. So we had to
Yeah,
create a whole new VR to actually settle Arcanine as number 2/3 in the tier. And so we waited for that to roll around, and then when it did happen, we were like, okay, so it happened. Let's get back to the RU idea. And that's when we decided, all right, let's Theorymon.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, as Emily said, I was talking about ADVRU. Of course, it wasn't like the first time any ADVRU subject has been discussed, but just no one put it in practice just yet. So I was talking about it, and Emily, I think, hopped in the discussion. We were just like vibing with the idea, and we just like, fuck it, let's just do it. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah,
for
it
sure.
was
And
it was a nice start.
if we take a look kind of briefly, we kind of see the list of legal UU Pokemon, right? That kind of set ADV RU apart from uh, ADV NU. And then you mentioned that all of this was based off of usage. So that was what, C
Viability.
plus, I
Viability.
think? Or I'm sorry,
Yeah,
yes, viability rankings.
It was C plus, and from
Oh yeah,
there downward from C, C minus, and the unfortunate A unranked Pokemon in UU, which really wanted to make us do an RU. And a
Mm-hmm.
lot, and some of those unranked Pokemon actually ended up being some of the pillars of the tier. So hey, we did something good. Um,
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And we can
so I
kind of
think
look at some of yeah.
oh, but so I think when we first looked at that list, we tried to say, okay, which of these are good, which of these are butts, and we immediately decided. I thought some of the main threats were going to be Stantler, Magmar, Camerupt,
Mm-hmm.
Ninetales. Those are
Private.
the fire types. And but there were two mods we had our eyes set on that were really, really not good for the tier. Firo and Ninja
Yeah.
with them
Yeah.
when we started building, we started having ideas, we started like making our own little role compa. Oh, did I tap out?
This will cut out a little bit.
Discord tapped out for me a little bit there. But anyway, so we looked at Fear Wind and Jess, we started building, and we found out that you can't build a team without Firo or Ninjask. And what they contributed to the tier, oh boy. So Firo is there. We thought it was problematic because it was one of the fastest choice band users. It forced a lot of risky speed ties with a lot of the other base 100 Pokemon like Raichu and Ninetales. Fearo's power and speed and Spike's immunity, good longevity actually, make it just the superior normal type in the tier and a stupidly good breaker. Like even Metang coming in on double edge, it can't do it too many times throughout a battle, and if it gets hit by HP ground, basically you die. Not to just consider with with the ghost types that want to come out on double edge, they get nailed by Drill Peck. And even then, like if you wanted to out offense Firo, you had to deal with the strong stab priority from it, which helped versus other Firo and Salak sweepers. Yeah, it was just very commanding when it was on the field, especially with spike support, which we'll touch on a little bit later, but spikes are like stupidly integral to the tier and its identity. Ninjask, on the other hand, Ninjask was far more broken than Firo. Because basically, anytime you get it in on the field on someone that's scared out, you basically got free SD and it was GG with spikes up. Because it had perfect coverage, bug flying ground, and with SD, it mauled through everything. Because without investment, it already outsped everything in the tier. It can EV into bulk so that it can take prio like Firo Quick Attack and Chan. Well, Chan Mach Punch it already four times resisted. Stuff like Firo Quick Attack, Persian Fake Out, it those bounced off of it because it had good bulk EVs, which let it 1v1 like so much of the tier. And you can't out offense it with a Salic Sweeper either because of speed boost. So basically, games with Ninjas turned into get it in, get SD, profit. And so we decided that those two were very problematic for the tier. So the early council, me, LPZ, and BFM, we decided to say, I don't think that these will be good for the tier going forward. And I think we can safely have a tier without them and it'd be perfectly fine. So we held a council vote. We also threw Primeape in there because it was a stupidly strong fighter with bulk up and reversal and all kinds of other sets. But ugh. Um, we held a council vote. We we unanimously banned Ninjask from the tier. With Firo, LBC and BFM voted ban. I voted unban just because I wanted to see no ban because I wanted to see if we could have a meta suited to handle Firo, like maybe after Ninjask ban or whatever. But nah, I'm with how the result turned out. I was like, yeah, this is fine. Like I'm glad that we're probably not having Fear Wars anymore. So Fear Ninjas got banned. Primate obviously stayed in the tier. And
Yeah.
from then on, I feel like the tier became stable. And so that's when we decided, well, I think the best way to get this tier off the ground is if we had a tournament. So that's the big reason why we wanted Big Fat Mandus to come help, was to help set up a whole tour.
Yeah, and we'll hop into that actually right now. But also, uh, now that we have the ability of hindsight to look back on kind of some of those, like you were talking about the inception of ADV RU and kind of some of those early metas. I think it's also quite funny. This is the kind of general ADV RU thread in the ruins of Alf Smog subforum. If we just scroll down, you can kind of see some of these kind of earlier tier lists and how people were uh, kind of looking at the tier, approaching things. And here's like the LpZ surveys and stuff about kind of just how these things are looking. So, yeah, we talked about this a little bit briefly before the call, but Amity, I mean, we see your like kind of inception tier list here. If you had to pick one mon here, like that you completely maybe missed the mark on, or think you just rated improperly, what would you pick? What would you pick here?
Okay, right now, looking at it, very much Rapidash. That took like such a long development to make Rapidash like one of the best mons in the tier, but I mean, we should have figured out that Rapidash was really good. I think we were just too shoehorned on like certain sets on it. Uh like the first set that I thought had potential was the Sunny Day Pattaya set, but then when I was like spectating RUGO and a lot of players figured out quick, Subtox is also viable. With Sunny Day, you can just run minus defense nature and go HP Rock to batter other fires. CB, I came up with that set actually before the RUGO Rapidash development, but CB is pretty good too. I think some people use Silk Scarf here and there, but yeah, if there's one thing I'd change, it's I'd make sure that Rapidash wasn't actually Crapidash.
Yeah. LPZ, what about you? Looking at kind of this image, well, what's something you think you would do differently here?
Mm, actually, I won't say Rapidash because Emily already picked that. So
Yeah.
there are some interesting picks, especially the Sun months. Like they are coming to be more prominent and nowadays meta. Uh, both because of Rapdash's existence too, because it eases the existence of the archetype, but they are good mons on their own, so they can set up their own sun. There have been like set development on it, especially in Sheep Tree's case. It's been running like different hidden power typings, extra sensory for fighters, like any hunter too. But there are a lot of months to pick from there, to be honest. Hypno 2 has been rising uh, to be a good CM win con nowadays. It's like a very recent development, sorry. Um, but one I would like to highlight is Polyreth, actually. Because back at the time, we used to only look at like offensive Polyreth sets. Basically only bulk up and belly drum, which are, well, it still works nowadays. Bit less at the case of belly drum, because now you've been seeing like a more priority in quick attack rap dash, for example. PGH has been rising popularity as well. It's hard to set up. Kinda. Bulk up is still more common, but the real deal with Polyref nowadays are bulky sets. By that I mean like either Restock sets or lead sets with like counter or toxic. They're just like really good, and in my opinion, that's what have keeping this mon as relevant as it is nowadays.
Cool. So Polyrath. It also, funnily enough, I don't even think Polyrath is on this. I don't
No, it's
see
it's
him.
A minus.
Oh, I'm so stupid. Yeah, he's right there. Okay.
Yeah, I think the
Yeah.
thing with Polyrath is that Belly Drum and Bulk Up were doing very well in the early stages of the tier. Like people were I was the first to like use Belly Drum Wrath to success in the kickoff tour. And from there it just like exploded in popularity. People started running Earthquake on Belly Drum Wrath for Sableye, and because the Grass Darks weren't really much of a thing yet, not to mention that it Earthquake already nails the Grass Darks anyway.
Yeah.
But I think when I discovered Rest Talk and stuff like Toxic Protect, Polyrath, stuff like the bulky set, I really wanted to do it for the spread because Fizdef Polyrath takes a 3-8 KO from like about every physical threat in the tier. And it's like one of the best checks to Flareon and Kabutops, Bayonet. It soft checks the normals. It soft checks Hitmonchan. It walls Glalie and like other Polyrath. But yeah, as soon as I discovered that, then I was like, yeah, I think we can safely say that Polyrath is a bit more splashable. And I think with the rise in Belly Drum in the early stages of the tier, people were like super accounting for Belly Drum Wrath at that time. People were running like offensive Metang so that EQ can break its sub. People were running Hidden
Mhm.
Power Grass Glalie. That's the big one. Is Hidden Power
Mhm.
Grass Glalie to break Polyrath sub. Uh, People are running Roar Ninetales for sub Bellydrum Polyrath, but yeah, I think Bellydrum still can tear through fat like very well, but like you can't just slap it on a team anymore and hope that it'll just win on the spot when you get it in on Glalie or Metang. Especially
Yeah.
because Metang is not as much common glue anymore. That's another thing I'd change is I'd probably move Metang from S like down to the high B ranks. Um, because you can't rely as much on Metang coming in. And even with Glalie, spikes are still very good, but Glalie has anti-Polyrath measures. And to be fair, some priority tends to bounce off of Polyrath at 25%. But if you get early spikes up and you keep the defensive pressure on, then it shouldn't be too hard to make Belly Drum Wrath break only one hole, then it instantly just gets, or it can like not do as much damage as it wants the next turn, or because the lack of spikes chip early in the game, or stuff. But yeah, defensive Polyrath, it definitely helps the Mon. And I'm
Yeah.
glad that people are starting to recognize it, which eventually led to the development of defensive Politoed, which is also very good at holding a lot of balances together. At first, on my Rest Talk Polyrath, I was running Brick Break HP Ghost just so I can have perfect coverage. But then I figured out, oh yeah, Surf Seismic Toss, that's fine enough coverage. Seismic Toss actually hits Chimecho harder than uninvested HP Ghost. Surf 2-hit KOs Polyrath, which HP Ghost can already do, and gives me better Sleep Talk rolls versus the normals. Um, and with Politoed, it's kind of the similar story, but with Toxic over with Toxic over Sleep Talk. My first original idea for defensive Politoed was Surf Toxic Rest and some other filler like Haze or Perish Song for Toad Sub. But I figured out the best option for Toad Sub and like for like other waters and other grasses is Seismic Toss. So Seismic Toss became a good option on both defensive polys. And I think they have breathed a whole fresh life into the meta. Like,
Yeah.
I think if we figured those sets out in the era of Ninetales, I think that mon would have still inevitably dropped anyway because oh, it can wisp the waters, but the waters are now better status absorbers.
Right. And you
But
mentioned that kind of like earlier meta development. I think that's a great transition into kind of again what we were talking about a little bit before with the ADV RU Inception Tour. So this August 20th, 2023, the first kind of official ADV RU tournament um, on the site. approved by Feliburn and Evigaro, RIP, no longer our tier leaders, stepped down quite recently. Um, but yeah, here we go with kind of this first iteration of ADV RU. So coming into this, because the tier had already like formed before this, right? This was a couple weeks after ADV RU had already kind of been around. People had been experimenting. A little bit of the meta had started to develop. So what was kind of like that environment coming into this tour? Like what was good? What were people using? Um, and yeah, just kind of what was it like in ADV RU in the nascent days?
I
All
think
right.
the earliest things that people were using, well, besides the myriad of Firo ninjas, we figured out that Persian could be a decent lead with hypnosis. That was like the theory mon concept that I got from GSE NU, is that Persian could actually be kind of okay with hypnosis. It can run Adamant since Adamant still outruns Firo right to Ninetales. Um, Early stuff. Belgium Polyrath is one. I think Waylord and Mantine were considered some of the better bulky waters. I think there was a lot of Wish Hypno back in the day. Uh, Obviously the mods I listed in like S or the S that is in my old VR, those were used a lot. I think Stantler and Magmar were some of the biggest threats at this time, though. Stantler, especially after the Firo ban, was regarded as a really good normal type wall breaker. And Magmar, it's like you could not switch in on Magmar at all until people discovered Politoed and stuff. Like a lot of the other waters didn't like switching into it besides Quagsire. So yeah, and Magmar speed tier was considered solid at the time. I think in general just Magmar because it can like break open holes like very early in the game, which made it a solid lead, good mid game breaker, and it can be good into opposing frailer offense with the Endurosalic set. Yeah, I'd say Magmar and Stantler were probably some of the biggest RU ranked end quote threats at this time.
Cool. LPZ, what about you? I mean, I also think, by the way, I think it's funny. Um, for normally you just have like you post in on these threads and then you're in the tournament. And then you have I love Camerupt, and then you have some people just being like I love LPZ, and I think that is so funny. Like B1 Karma, I think this is so funny. But yeah, back on topic. What about you? Beyond what Amity was kind of saying about like the Magmars and the Stantlers, Stantler, by the way, who was kind of pertained as big RU hitter in the ADV tier at least. What were some of the things that were kind of like meta coming into this first tournament?
Well, he was like, I mean, talking about Standler, sorry. He was like a good mon, like head on, but he was less seen than Persian at the time, if I'm not mistaken, just because Persian had a bit more set versatility at the time,
I think it
with
was
both,
I think
with both.
before the tour, Stantler was a bit more used. I think we figured out CB like midway or a little bit later in the tour, but
Actually, it was like at the end of the tour, like semi or
yeah.
straight up grand finals. Anyways, but Persian, like very early on, was more used, like more common, as well as Primate, which was among we had our eyes on because he could be a potential Pokemon. But at that time, we didn't know. We just needed to run like ground immunes because even though like Primate is a fighting type, its Earthquake just hit it like everything very hard. And it was before the time like Haunter was being spammed, and you see like the Golbats and Pidgeots. So it wasn't that common seeing like ground immune mons. So first things first, as soon as we just like set the thread up, I mean the post up, the tour has been like very well received. I think like both RU and ADV communities, but I think a bit more from RU. And well, I think it was like a bit more than like 60 something signups. I don't remember exactly, But talking about the tour itself, I would say there were like two very different metas from Swiss stage from the single elimination stage. There were like two different tours. Yeah, I mean tiers. Sorry. So coming into single elimination stage, we can say that there was the time Polytoad was starting to like peak in popularity. Like the first time, like Polytoad was seen as a threat, because in Swiss stage, it was like slept on. People just like was trying Mantine, which honestly was not doing well. Like the times it was like appearing in matches, it wasn't doing like anything like impactful. Sometimes he used to like cripple a couple months with subtalk set, but like nothing crazy. But then Polytol was just kind of discovered at that time, and since then it's been like one of the best months in the tier, and there has been like development during this late stage of the tour, and that's it. I think it was like two very different metas.
Hmm, cool. Yeah, and you talked a little bit about the kind of reception from the community. So after this tournament kind of concluded, so 3 weeks of Swiss, and then the kind of the single elimination stage, the playoffs rounds we have here. Kind of talk to me a little bit about how kind of both ADV and RU was feeling about this new tier. It's not every day that a new tier kind of just pops up like that. So was there any type of like backlash or kind of new support coming after y'all kind of finished with this first real kind of venture into the tier. Now it's like an actual tier now. We've had a tournament with it, kind of come and go.
I think maybe it's perception bias, but I think people generally were positively viewing the tier, especially like after the tour. We've seen a lot of the games played at this point. We know how the tier functions, and I think people were generally positively receiving it from both the advanced community and the RU community, mainly the RU community, which I think helped give us a large boost, especially since Feli was going into finals. That's when the advanced are well, that's when advanced RU was like really starting to pop off because the RU community was tuning into that entire set. Like it was
Mhm.
like the entirety of RU Cord was tuning into Queen of Bean versus Feli finals. Uh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways,
Also,
Bella
like
versus Queen of Bean, very fun. Yeah.
just to add up on that, Um, I don't think there was like any type of at least like public or visible type of backlash in the tier. I think everyone was like at least liking it a bit and seeing the effort the people like was trying to put in to just come up with new stuff is like a good form of like representatives to like how they are feeling about the meta and stuff like that. And even when the tour ended, you can see like people shouting out us for making the tour and the tour being fun and stuff like that.
mhm.
So yeah, it was like in my opinion, in my vision, it has been like entirely positive reception. I don't think I've seen people publicly hate on this tour.
And if they were dogging on the tier, I would be like, hmm, hmm. They shouldn't dog on the tier.
So true. So real. Okay, so after kind of the conclusion of this first tournament, I think the next one in chronological order that came up was the Ruins of Valve Spotlight that we have here,
Yeah.
and that's at the end of the year, December 31st, 2023. So literally the last day of 2023. So coming into the new year, kind of what was ADVRU kind of feeling like there? Was there a big jump, a kind of disconnect between kind of this earlier tour and this one that's like 2 months later down the line.
I think we were still trying to discover stuff. It was mainly a quiet period, but bleh. It was a quiet period in between when the tour ended and when uh ROA Spotlight started. But I was still trying to run games with people. I think a lot of people were trying to innovate a little bit more, and I think it was a good time for just me to rest and not worry about innovation in the time of competitive nature. I think I'd explored a couple months here and there.
Hmm.
Uh,
Um,
but yeah, when I found out that Runes of Alph was actually considering Advanced RU for a ladder, that was like it. When I got that news, I could feel the joy rushing through me, like the dopamine rush of hearing, yeah, Advanced RU is going to be considered for Spotlight, and because I
yeah.
knew at that moment we'd get a larger player base, we'd get much larger recognition. People are going to
Hmm.
say, "Oh yeah, Advanced RU, that's a pretty cool tier."
Yeah, especially because we didn't have exactly like plans on it being in a Runes of Off spotlight tour. I mean, that's not something you can actually plan. So it's just like up for voting and see what happens, you know? So yeah, it
Yeah.
was like a very cool moment. There we could see like we had chance to make it a very big thing coming into this year because we only had one tour last year, which dured like it. How many? I think it was like 2 months of the kickoff tour. So yeah, we needed a rest, and we didn't expect the spotlight tour. But I want to say that we had a plan for doing like setting up a type of like circuit. We just didn't know exactly how we would like administrate the tours. We were discussing like the type of tours we would have this year, and in which we are succeeding. But we didn't know what to expect this year, like in terms of player base on tour inclusion. We just didn't know what to expect. We didn't know that we had a chance to be included in a new project in RU. Balburn told us about RUGL, so we were also accounting for that, even though it was like 5 months later. But still, we didn't know like the repercussion the tier would have coming into 2024.
Yeah, RUGO. We love RUG League. Um, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But before that, just kind of following the chronology a little bit more. So, Ruins of Alph Spotlight Tour, which was another Swiss tour, by the way. It's interesting. I don't know if Swiss was just like the format of choice. Like, I don't know what exactly made y'all made like pick Swiss over like single elim or double elim or something.
Well,
Um,
Runes of Alpha always does Swiss for these kinds of
Yeah,
things
it's
because they want
Swiss
to
by
maximize
default.
all the games.
Interesting. What about the kickoff tour? Was it just Swiss just for kicks? Like y'all just were like, okay, let's do Swiss.
It was interesting choosing the format for the kickoff tour because there were a lot of games. We wanted a lot of games, but over time there had to be some sort of narrowing it down to what eventually
Hmm.
become a five person round robin finals. Um,
And I'm gonna say, I do not regret that. It was like a fire finals.
Yeah, look at this. Look at this freaking
Yeah,
spreadsheet, bro.
yeah. I mean,
This is so great.
like, even though it was like a bearing mistake, I don't regret doing that honestly, because it was like a very cool finals to watch, and there were like these two tied players, Caliburn and Quinnipian. So yeah, it was just a joy. Like I don't really regret that.
Yeah, I mean, for the purposes of a new tier, just trying to get reps in, trying to get games and get more exposure, I think this is a great idea, even if it may have ended in a five-person round robin. I mean, this is just a lot of games, right? And just good for exposure. But yeah,
funny
moving on.
enough,
So we, yeah,
Runes of Alpha Spotlight. that also was a round robin finals, but it was between three people. Zerky, Seabass, and some other person. Was it
Yeah,
Kaji?
I think it was Kaji. Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, there it is. Kaji,
yeah.
Zerky, and then CBAS in the three-person finals. Oh man, that's so funny. I love Swiss format. Um, but cool. After we have the Ruins of Alph Spotlight tournament, a bit more time passes, and then we have okay. This is for later. We'll talk about this later. We have the Jump Off tour. So this is the kind
Oh.
of
Oh man.
the first
We done the
the
same thing.
first suspect tour for a potential addition to the tier in Jump Off. So kind of walk me through a little bit about why exactly it was Jump Off that was being tested, and then kind of how the tour played out, and what ended up eventually leading to Jump Off not being an addition to the tier.
So let me get one thing clear. Jumpluff in UU, we all knew it's not good. Like zero damage, Subseed is bad in Tentacruel tier, so we knew to drop it to C plus just because it had the speed tier and fast encore sleep, I guess. But it was C plus at the time. We just didn't want to include it because it was the most recent addition from BL. Ninjask and Arcanine were a long time ago, so Ninjask could just safely say, yeah, we can do this. But Jump Up was like literally just added to the UUVR and just added to the RU qualifications. But we didn't want to play with it quite yet because it's still new. We wanted to give it time, see if it actually was not a real part of RU. And in UU, people have used it. It flopped. I think people used like Jump Luff stall,
Oh
like
man.
with SD Jump Luff as a win con on Sableye Muck. Oh no, like Sableye Blastoise Altaria stall for UU. But in general, yeah, we figured out it was not good. So we decided to host a tour, say, we're going to suspect Jump Love and see if it's not broken here as it's not broken in UU. Oh boy, were we wrong. Oh boy. This is going to be a long
Yeah,
thing to explain about Jump Love. So
yeah,
we figured out Jump Luff was like it was good. It had the speed tier, it had the Jump Luff, it had Subseed and SD. What we didn't know is how much Jump Luff would constrict the meta and how much Jump Luff speed tier mattered, how much Jump Luff getting in once was akin to Ninjask, basically. Once it got in, and there was many opportunities to get in, it had a bevy of resistances and immunities and to fighting, ground, water. Basically, you got it in on anything. You can click Encore, you can click Sleep. They would not know. And the threat of playing around that made Jump Left get free SD, free Subseed, and it was just so hard to play around Subseed when a lot of the Subseed targets were taking permaspikes damage. Know how I said permaspikes in the beginning? That really helped Jump Left because subseed damage sticked a lot more. SD, it was so easy to clean with it because it was not impossible to get two or three SDs in a single game. It had perfect coverage for the tier in ground plus flying with aerial ace HP ground. And despite its quote low power, the fact that it can just get multiple SDs and have a monopoly on the speed tiers, it forced so much people to use Jolly Persian and a lot more bulky stuff. People were trying to use Liquid Ooze Swalot to cope with Subseed. People were using Hypno to try and install it. I think the biggest thing was Glalie was literally forced to run more Ice Beam because Shadow Ball could not break its sub. It was just so much for the tier that games quickly got annoying fast. And so that's when I said at like semifinals, if you want to play Pluffless, I I don't blame you. Oh, if you want to go to the main thread, we can actually show the results of the jump left vote. So It's way down there. Oh no, the first page. It's like, yeah, scroll very much down. We decided, um,
Up a bit, up a bit, up a bit.
down, down, down.
Yeah, you passed it.
Yeah. We
Oh,
decided unanimously, it's
Hmm.
it's gone. We don't want this. We don't want this.
this is the first
Yeah.
time I think I've ever seen a 100% fan
This was the 100% out of the voters that did vote keep RUBL at the time. But as
Oh,
later
word,
as I
word, word.
got
Yeah,
more responses, I think it was like 14 or 15 responses.
yeah. 15
Basically,
voters.
all of them voted kept RUBL.
Yeah.
It was literally unanimous. We don't want
This is so
this.
funny. I'm liking this.
Yeah,
This is so funny.
yeah. I want to add the fact that this is by far the most broken mon that has passed in this year, at least in my opinion. Cause like it was just extremely awful situations, and yeah, as Emily said, just like forced a bunch of things you don't usually want to be stuck with, like ice beam glalie, like you want more variety on it depending on teams. Jolly version, which honestly just doesn't hit hard enough, but it was kind of needed. And yeah, before even some of semifinals, they were like people were doing bluffless, like
Hmm.
so.
It's like
Yeah,
a
MT just made it like formal to like be fine to play bluffless because this one was just a menace. Like he was arguably more broken than Furu and Ninjas in this tier,
I
arguably.
yeah, I'd say Ninjask was slightly more broken just because you can't Salak counter sweep it. But
Mm,
yeah, jump bluff, it was super obnoxious, and that's when I said, yeah, if you want to play Pluffless, because I know some of you really want to play Pluffless, you
hmm.
can.
yeah. It's
Yeah,
it's like a
but
foregone conclusion at that point, right?
Do what?
I wouldn't say it like was a bad thing to do, like this type of tour.
Yeah,
We had to test it, so like it was done. We very like by round two, we already knew what was going on. Like by round two, I mean, I think even round one, we knew that this moment like it was not it. Like it was not it. So like it was a fair shot to test it. We had no idea how it would like behave in such a tier, because all we had was like our vision about it in UU, which MD said it's not good there. It's not good at all. So it was a fair shot. I think it's a good representative to like future attempts if they even like happen at all. So yeah, I'm still glad we did that.
Yeah.
yeah.
The stats kind
It
of
was
reflect this too. And I mean, you don't want to
yeah,
put a ton of like emphasis on stats, but like look at this top five usage, um, highest win rate of that top five. Not the highest in the top 10. Persian was a little higher, um, and so was Sableye. But I mean, it's kind of indicative of this type of thing. That okay, maybe it's a bit much. Um, but yeah, go on, Amity. I think you're gonna say something.
uh, I forgot at this point.
No, that's fine. But yeah, so that was the Jump Left tour, and that happened. When did this start? February, right? Okay, so February
Yeah,
19th is when it happened, and it
fresh off
ended.
the it was like fresh off the ROA spotlight. So the people who were playing in ROA spotlight, we wanted to capitalize on that, say we're gonna host a new tour, and
Yeah.
a lot of the
Yeah.
people that were involved there were like, yeah, I'm gonna sign up. Like Seabass. Seabass got to what, semi quarterfinals of this tour. Spoiled Berries and Beatty, they were originally playing for the ROA spotlight, came in here just to play
Mhm.
more advanced RU, which is always a good sign, and mainstays ever since.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And by the time this ends, and this kind of transitions well into kind of the next like big tour that happens, um, which is RUGL, which we'll get into now. But also, this was part of your like quote unquote kind of ADV RU circuit, which is still going on technically. Um, And this is kind of just briefly a look at kind of uh, the different tours that contributed points towards that. We have your Spotlight Tour, happened at the beginning of this year, and the Jump Left Tour, which we covered. I don't see a column for the Open that's like happening right now. I don't know if that's accurate. Is that accurate? Should there be a column for that?
It's gonna be implemented at some point. Once
Yeah,
once we do finals, then we're gonna have points all settled. So C will definitely be in like top four minimum.
I word. Cool. Okay, in that case, we'll just kind of just move on into the next big thing in the timeline, which is not this. This is still later. And this is what I'm talking about, the kind of open that's happening. But the next thing
Yeah.
that was big, as far as the ADV RU timeline goes, is the RU Gaming League, RUG League, the RU equivalent for the farmers leagues of kind of the sub four PLs. So you have your UU like Farmers Premier League. You have like PU actually doesn't have a Farmers League. I think like Monotype has a Farmers League. A whole bunch of these sub four PLs have kind of just like this B team tournament, and RU Gaming League was the RU equivalent of this. And notably, the first team tour that included ADV RU. Um, I think LpZ, you mentioned earlier that Felly kind of gave y'all a heads up that, okay, they were looking at having ADV RU as an inclusion in this tier. So once you got confirmation on that, and then once, RUG League kind of picked up, I mean, how did ADV kind of take a leap from there? Because I think this tournament really is where the big separation comes from what ADV RU was like before RUGL, and now we have a very distinct ADV RU after RUGL. So kind of, talk a little bit about kind of the growth of the community, and what this tour really meant for this year.
It was so good having a team tour for this. It was just like so refreshing to come after all these individual tours and say, well, now it's a team tour. So I think inherently people are going to be a lot more focused in their prep, and a lot of people are going to tune in to matches since it's not just about the individual experience, it's more about the team experience, and the team inherently should care about advanced RU. And that's when a lot of tour mainers started really picking up advanced RU, which ZS, Avarice, usually known for uh, playing in other types of tours, signed up for advance, and it was just really good to see new faces, and even some of the managers were like, I'm gonna definitely support advance and get good players. I helped with that post right there. Because I knew the RUGL managers weren't going to be exactly familiar with your advanced RU player base, considering it's like a very new tier. So I just wanted to list some of the players that have been doing well with results, and list some of the players that have been doing well with results so that the managers can say this is the pool that we can select from if they're going to sign up, or et cetera, which I think I've got everyone in there to sign up, or they already have signed up when I made the post.
uh-huh.
And it was good. It was very refreshing to have the team tour experience going into RUGL.
Yeah, absolutely. And LPZ, I know you maybe a little more connected with kind of the tour community at large, kind of a somewhat bigger name when it comes to actually being a part of these team tours. So, as far as ADV RU's inclusion into this, what were kind of your expectations going into the RUGL season? And kind of did the season live up to it? Did ADV RU turn out to be everything you wished it would?
Well, there has been like a lot of hype from our community ever since signups went on. But so we didn't expect exactly who we were gonna see outside of like our mainstays like Barry's, KOB, BFM, and such, Seabass too. But we didn't know like about the other tour players, C, ZS, Everest, Medea, and it was hype to see who got picked afterwards. Me and Amity were in call
Oh
to
yeah.
watch the auction as well. We were like discussing who was gonna like ADV for each team, the possibilities, the support options. So we could have like a bit more insight early on in the tour. And one thing I already expected, and it's honestly a common theme in any type of tour, to be honest, any type of team tour at least, which is mainers, a couple of them are gonna like stick out from the other ones. For example, berries and Kyobi were definitely like ahead of the competition. Some mainers were gonna struggle due to like lack of experience or just um, they just got behind in the meta exploration, which is honestly like common. That's not a terrible thing. It happens like mainly in brand new tiers such as this. So yeah, like expecting this, we were like seeing at KOB mainly to do well. C as well, since C is a prominent ADV player. Like she has been around like for a good while in like different ADV tiers throughout the years. So yeah, we were expecting that. It was hype. Actually, it was like very hype. A lot of exploration. For example, the what we said about Rapidash. And Rapidash was a funny thing because before our UGL, there wasn't like as much like the amount of discussion we have right now with the Mon. But out of sudden, in week one, Rapidash was like almost top five usage, if not top five usage. I don't remember right now.
It got
So
like four uses week one of RUGL, and that's when we were like, what's going on? What's happening with the fire
yeah,
horse?
yeah, exactly. Because like we didn't like consider it that big of a threat. We were like mainly in the Flareon train at that time because Flareon had the mixed set that Rapidash also
Yeah.
uses right now. But Flareon can't really replicate the same Sunny Day
Uh,
set or do Subtalk sets as good as it does.
I
So
think the
yeah.
thing that really helped Subtox Rapidash was the popularity of Ninetales at the time, starting to run more
Mhm.
HB Grass for stuff like Politoed. And a
Yeah.
lot of those HB Grass toxic Ninetales just got turbo screwed by Rapidash just because of the speed jump, and it just got bodied so that Rapidash just got so much momentum, and it basically forced Tails to run HP Water again, which again means you have to drop HP Grass and you don't hit Waters that meaningfully. So the rise in Rapidash as an offensive fire not only just pushed Ninetales out due to competition, but also due to the fact that the meta's a lot harsher to Ninetales than it was. Well,
Mhm.
at least for the sets that we were using, the toxic sets, but eventually later on in the tour, people said Ninetales, okay, solid lead. It can do the thing that people haven't used yet on lead Ninetales was charcoal overheat to consistently Oko Glalie and other stuff, but and people were starting to drop a lot more Lumberry leads so that Wisp could connect on a lot more like Poliwrath, Hitmonchan, and Stantler. And but in general, Ninetales was falling out of its grace as an offensive fire, and people were really starting to say, well, Rapidash is a lot better into the tier's main waters. Rapidash has the speed tier that actually doesn't have to speed tie Raichu. Rapidash is very deadly. Rapidash enables so much team styles and many mons in the meta. Rapidash has made a cascade effect over what mons are usable and
Mhm.
what mons have been helped a lot by Rapidash. See Mantine, Vic, Shiftry, Swalot to an extent.
Yeah. Mainly on that, like not only Ninetales had seen like a good drop off in usage and viability, but also mons like Persian, which was a former like staple in the tier. It
Mhm.
still is a good mon, but like it's just like much less common than Standler nowadays. Persian just suffers from lack of power. He really wants to run Jolly nowadays just because how common Rapidash is. He really wants to outspeed it, which is one of its main traits nowadays. That's a big price to pay due to its lackluster uh, power. Like in general, you just like can orchestrate such a great um, coverage, just like Stanler. Stanler having earthquakes like huge for it, and mainly as lead. Like we saw a lot of Stanler lead, and still seeing like to this date, which is just like in one hit KO machine. Like, and meta is starting to like adapt to it, like forcing more stuff like elite polygraph is a good adaptation to answer the amount of span of Sandler and Himonchan. But there were like a couple, like not even a couple, there were a lot of developments during this tour. Like even Mantine, as Amity said, Mantine was like slept on because the same problem with electric coverage. But what happened is the fires and waters at the time were just like uh, trying to use HP Grass more often to not be fodder for stuff like Quagsire, for example. But which like Mantine used to abuse that to get opportunity to get in and do its stuff, whether it be like Subtox, which I don't personally feel like it's the best at, but Rain Dance Mantine is really potent and really enjoyed this free turns to get the rain dance and start stuff and dropping stuff, which also resulted on Paliper dropping off, which was a very short trend, to be honest. Like it dured, I think, what, not even 2 months, I think, because yeah, not even
Maybe.
2 months. Yeah, it was starting to pick up in usage. Because he used to be a good, not use, it still is a good answer to Himon-chan and Polyrath and stuff like that. Mixed fires such as Clarion, which we didn't have mixed Rapidash at the time, so it was like a cold check to this. But as the meta just progressed through, it just like was kept behind.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I I
Mantine
think
was just much better at checking Sunny Day Ninetales, and Mantine still had the ability to soft check Hitmonchan. So it's like, yeah, you just use Mantine because Mantine has like that offensive presence and the defensive presence. Mantine actually benefits from Rapidash a lot, not just because it can come in on Sunny Day and counter sweep it with Rain Dance, but also the Rain Dance sets are helped by Choice Band Rapidash. No, I said Choice Band Rapidash earlier in the video. That really helped Mantine because Choice Band Rapidash is able to power through the Politoed switch-ins and Poliwrath switch-ins with Double Edge, and that really helped push the waters into Mantine HP Elec or Grass range. I think HP Elec nowadays because you want to hit opposing Mantine, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that really helped Mantine stand out as a rain sweeper, and all of a sudden Rain became from supporting just a general rain sweep from Mantine and Huntail or Huntail just to just Mantine pretty much because Mantine is holding like every bit of rain together and Huntail is just like it's there but you really want Mantine's advantages, notably outspeeding Thalacconnor, notably off checking Hitmonchan and Sunny Day Rapidash, all of that stuff. What else can I say about me? Oh yeah, there's been a replay where you can actually see it on this channel. Uh, Queen of Bean used Mantine on a stall team with Quagsire. So the thing about electric grass coverage from Politoed is that while the trend can go back to HP Elec, that just means that Politoed can come in. Well, no, Quagsire can come in and curse up on it because of its mighty Spadef for taking on Politoed. And pairing the two together just makes for a very good defensive core as long as you don't run into HP Grass Raichu. Uh, Quagsire helps check Raichu, most variants of Raichu. Uh, helps check HP Elect Politoed, helps check Mixed Fires, and Mantine helps check HP Grass Politoed, as well as, oh yeah, Quagsire also checks Magmar pretty well, but that mon started dipping in usage a lot. Like, I haven't seen it much at all in RUGL, but Quagsire had that matchup because Mantine is like quad weak to T-Punch. Uh, Mantine helps check Sunny Day Rapidash and Hitmonchan, uh, and HP Grass Fires have had need that ever come up. So Mantine was a lot more explored back then. Well, in the RUGL tour, not just as a range sweeper, but just as a solid defensive pivot. Because especially one thing that helps it a lot in defensive pivot capabilities is ground immune and spikes immune, which helps it really come in and out, which helped a lot in that game on our YouTube. Like Queen of Bean had no problem switching Mantine in or doubling it in because Spikes just does not impede it at all. So even if Hitmonchan didn't get a spin there for Quagsire, then Mantine can help pick up some slack.
Yeah, for
Uh,
sure. I think it's only appropriate too that that was Queen of Bean that was using that Mantine team too, right? I mean, you look at back at kind of the spreadsheet, and Queen of Bean was
yeah,
the kind of well the best ADV RU player in the tour, part of the winning team, team liquidations, and I think if my memory serves correctly, started off what 5-0. Yeah,
yeah,
started off
Yeah,
the
it was
season with a
5-0.
5-0 run. So I'm pretty sure that was actually tied for best in the season too. Like at that point, no one. Yeah, I think 5-0 was tied for like best with like two other people, but that's kind of getting past the point. But yeah, the ADV RU pool definitely kind of strengthened with RUGL, I'd say. And you had managers kind of acknowledging that too. If we go back to kind of like the overall sheet, there was some like pretty significant money spent on some ADV RU people. I mean, uh, SEA 15, a 15.5K buy, respectable. Also for context, highest buy in RUGL was like 20K, I think 22K maybe. So 15.5, big investment. 10K for Sufis. He ended up being an SV guy, but like whatever. Queen of Bean, that like another dedicated ADV person. 10K buy. Uh, ZS dedicated ADV guy, 12.5K buy. So you had managers kind of, BFM 16K. Managers definitely kind of acknowledging that okay, ADV is definitely some place where we could get ahead. It's a newish tier. There are people who have kind of separated themselves out as kind of the front runners, and we can kind of take that in our advantage to just try and get a leg up on the competition. So, I yeah, I personally for me as a spectator view, ADV RU games generally also just happened earlier in the week for some reason. So that was like always the first games that I would be watching. And I, definitely enjoyed that from a spectator perspective. And the meta, definitely did take some leaps and bounds in terms of, kind of what we were seeing um, differently from how ADV RU was played before. You mentioned the Magmar thing before, Amity. Um, we just go back to like the usage stats. I mean, through the entire tour, Dagmar got brought exactly 2 times and lost both times, which is like, if I said that to you when like ADV RU had first come about, I'm sure that would have sounded crazy. But I'm like, Magmar is like the worst fire type option you have in the tier. Um, but yeah, stuff like
there
that
was
really,
there were
yeah,
suspicions of Ninetales being possibly better than Magmar. So if you said it to me at a later point in like the kickoff tour, I would have said, eh, maybe. I mean, you have a lot of things that outspeed it. I mean, you have a natural speed tier above Magmar, so I don't know. I'd still put it in the A ranks. No, but yeah. I wouldn't. I think now I think Magmar could use set change. Like I think people have used a lot more HP water, which loses to Sunny Dash. I have been recently using mixed Magmar with HP ground just to get the good hit on Rapidash and good hit on Ninetales, or if that ever comes up. But I've been experimenting a bit with that because minus defense nature doesn't really hurt it much.
Word.
Also, it's funny that you said advanced players play early in the week because I remember joking a lot in advanced RE Cord, like, you can call us anything you want, but you can't call us Johners.
No, for real though. Like it was actually every goddamn week. Y'all were playing like on Tuesday, Wednesday. I don't remember any Monday
Yeah,
gamings, but I do remember a lot of Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday gamings. And I'm like, bro, y'all are getting shit done.
yeah. Most of the games were done like by Friday. Like
Yeah, I
most
mean, you
weeks
only.
weeks were like completely done for ADV by Friday.
That's like so true because you only have 4 ADV games per week, but all four of them, like games, were getting done by Friday. Meanwhile, you have other teams who literally will play 7 games on Sunday. So shout outs to y'all for being like proactive with your gaming. That's kind of crazy. But yeah, I mean that was ADV RU. As far as RUGL's inclusion, and after this, after kind of RUGL ended, the next tour, and we can finally double back to this now, is the kind of ADV RU Open that's been going on since kind of the end of June. So uh, as the first kind of individual since RUGL, Meta has definitely looked a lot different. How has like kind of the community been since this first team tour, and then like gaming wise, how do teams start to look different from what they were before?
Weather, instantly. I can just answer that with a lot more weather. There's
Hmm.
sun sweepers have been benefiting a lot from Rapidash to the point where people have been experimenting a lot more with Shiftry and Victory Bell sets. Victory Bell, like, oh, we thought, it can get asleep, it can get other things. I've run mixed on it. People have run CB on it because nothing, with the downfall of Matang, like, basically nothing switches into a CB Sludge Bomb. Not even Golbat, which just gets 2 KO'd on the switch. Um, um,
Thank you, Bruno.
Uh,
By the way,
people have,
by the
oh
way,
yeah,
just real
spikeless.
quick,
People have
these
used a bit more
things,
spikeless.
these alternate like sign up conditions, very based. I love these. I love these.
I think I
Yeah,
have my
continue.
own in that thread.
Continue.
I think I have my own of
Weather
in
is
that thread.
based. I
Uh,
was trying to look
People
for
have
that. Yeah, here it is.
experimented more with spikeless. Because as good as Glalie is, and spikes are very integral to the tier's existence, it's not needed on every team because some mons and some mons are good without the need of spikes support. Not in the case of like Honor or Persian, but in general, if you can make a team that is primarily composed of things that can be a good offensive presence outside of spikes and base your team around limiting everything that Glalie can do, then Spikeless has actually a positive matchup against Spike's teams. And you can just fit a lot more slots because you don't need to use Glalie, which Glalie's good, but you don't need to. But the fact that you don't need to use it, it helps alleviate a lot of mons and team structures. Things like Swalot and Pidgeot and Meganium on Spikeless, they took a big rise, and I think Spikeless structures still to be explore have yet to be like fully explored because it's still like a big broad archetype that includes dropping Glalie and a spin blocker. But uh yeah, like spikeless weather, spikes weather, rain not as
I'll take
prominent as
Raichu.
sun. Oh yeah, Raichu. Like in the kickoff tour, I forgot to mention Pattaya Raichu was considered as one of the biggest threats in the tier because of its fast speed tier and great coverage that dropped like a lot of frail things. But as the meta got bulky and the meta had a bit more speed control, I think that Pattaya Raichu took a bit of a downswing. Like at least the sub Pattaya 3 attack sets. But after that, I was like, boom, 6 more Raichu sets. And then there became lead Raichu, uh, wish Raichu, reversal Raichu, optimized
Hmm.
sub punch Raichu, which people started using return, HP flying, HP grass, toxic on. Um, agility Raichu, which is very cool for Honor late game. I actually run support Raichu, which actually won in this tour because support Raichu can run Encore Light Screen T-Wave to support a Belly Drum Wrath Sweep. Very evil. I recommend people do it because it's evil and it's good.
Not Amity
Um,
spreading evil. Oh no.
but yeah, Raichu just got so much development within the last year as a Pattaya bot to a Lychee, not Lychee, Salac, uh,
Even
Salac,
Lychee, I think.
bulky. Mm, maybe if you could do like
I,
agility. Oh god,
yeah,
that
I
sounds.
remember. I remember watching someone use like Lychee reversal. I literally remember that.
Oh right, because they were like
If I
dropping Salac. I think I remember that.
if I got my Glalie blown
Yeah,
up by a Lychee reversal Raichu, I might just quit the game. Like I might forfeit right there. I might be like, I'm done with
like
this. I'm not playing this.
you have like if you have a way to deal with Rapidash earlier in the game, I think Lychee reversal can actually do stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah, you'd need Mad Dash lure. Um,
Mm-hmm.
probably like bulky Meganium, or if you can sludge bomb it on the switch with Vic, or blow up on it with Shiftry, that help.
Yeah.
But uh oh, I lost my train of thought. What was I going to say? What people were using in this tour. I've used those kind of sets. I've experimented more with spikeless. Um, Hypno had
Yeah.
a good overhaul. Like before, I think lead sets were actually very good early on when people were running like slower Glalie so it can run taunt for them. But I
Mm-hmm.
think as Glalie got more speedy, taunt became a bit of a relic on lead Hypno. So people started running Focus Punch to beat lead Glalie, and that was, or just any Glalie. If you can catch it on the switch, that's just a bonus. Um, people have been running Focus Punch on it, and lead Hypno wins a lot of 1v1s versus opposing leads, especially Poliwrath and Hitmonchan, which are some
Mm-hmm.
of the best leads in the tier. And that's what lead Hypno got a big resurgence. I think it's actually a very good lead on offense right now. But also mid game, if you were using mid game Hypno for Wish, you kind of had problems with the team synergies to go with it. Like affording cleric support means you had to use Badmon Rose, you had to use Chimecho, which stacked weaknesses, or Lickitung, which uh, stacked rolls a bit too much because Lickitung is also a Wish passer. So what people have been using, very interestingly enough, we thought was outclassed by all the others, was Calm Mind, because it's much bulkier than Chimecho. Maybe no spikes immunity, no ground immunity, no heal bell, but the ability to be faster and have fire punch from a Tang instead of HP fire. Uh,
Yeah.
any kind of other utility besides heal bell that you want, from substitute, taunt, T wave, protect, toxic, barrier if you're cheeky enough for it, hypnosis if you think it'll hit. The world is your cloister with the options that you can run on Calm Mind Hypno, basically. And I think that set has took a big rise, and I've made it work a couple times. I think LPZ also made it work in round
Yeah.
one. Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah,
It
Hypno's
just
good.
like went crazy. I think I set up on. I don't remember exactly, but I think it was a fighter. and I got to set up, and I just took down like 3 months before going down, because its main advantage, like as Amity said, it's just like its sheer bulk. It has a good amount of options, although it's a bit like fewer than Chimex, but its bulk is just so absurd, which definitely helps make it
Yeah.
work.
I think
And
Though I think that on Chimeco, I think there's a bit of opportunity cost not running Heal Bell on it. So
yeah,
Hypno's
yeah,
generally
it's
better at
just
using the
like,
other
why
tools.
would you run that over Hypno if you're not running Heal Bell nowadays, right?
Yeah. Essentially, that's
Yeah.
what Chimeco became. That took like a big downturn, whereas people thought Chimeco was a bit more versatile, but I think we just had to figure out Hypno's better bulk came in very handy.
Another trend that went on through the end of RUGL2, this current tour, is SD Selak Meganium as well. It's another thing that has been
Hmm.
like running around, and it's pretty good. Like, it already has like enough bulk to basically not get bulk hold by pretty much anything not named like boosted fire moves, if I had to
Yeah,
guess. So
because
like it has an easy time getting an SD and not like rely on getting subs to proc select. So that's why it's very good.
yeah, because even it can like live Rapidash Fire Blast from full if it's not charcoal. If it's like
Yeah,
if it has bulky Vs like max HP, then it can live Dash Fire Blast from full process Salic. That's if Dash plays it a bit too safe there.
Hmm.
But
yeah,
yeah.
Cool.
Um
Yeah, I mean that's kind of.
yeah.
I mean that
So go
it's
ahead.
just kind of glad to hear some of the developments that have been happening. I mean, before, I mean, weather wasn't really even brought. When I asked you about kind of like the beginnings of the tier, I mean, weather, insofar as like maybe Rapidash weather or Mantine weather, or having those guys as standalones, having Shiftry, having Victory Bell. I've seen a lot of those kind of running around this tour, which again, weren't really a thing earlier on. As well as kind of you mentioned those spikeless structures and kind of these fat setup sweepers in Hypno, in Meganium, these guys who, unlike Polyrath, maybe don't really need to like get up a sub or do stuff like that to kind of be potent. Um,
Oh yeah, another thing about Salic Meganium is that even at 25%, it's the same deal as Polyrath, where no Prio Okos it.
yeah,
Like besides
yeah,
CB Chan. But yeah, I think it's the same thing with Polyrath, where only CB Chan can KO it at 25% with Prio.
yeah.
yeah.
So and this tour too is also in its like kind of final stages. So started at the end of June, and now we're kind of getting into finals, which I think you'll be doing a commentary on later today, right, Amity? The
Yeah,
Cryo
it's
versus
gonna
SCA
be
game.
in an hour 30.
Very banger, very fire. So yeah, this tour is kind of wrapping up, and as is kind of been the trend for ADV RU tours this year. I mean, we had the Spotlight tour, and at I noticed this too. I think Spotlight ended. When's the last post here? Yeah, February 27th. Then we hopped right into RUGL, I think, which was February 28th. I think the commencement threat went up. Um, Once our UGL ended, we kind of ran right into the ADVRU kind of open tour. And now that ADVRU open is kind of closing, we're kind of looking into the future where ADVRU finds itself as a slot in the RU World Cup 6. So, a couple things
Yeah.
notable to mention here. One, uh, another team tour, second team tour, second one this year in 2024. ADVRU has made it into, and notably, this one is a custom avatar tour, so a little higher competition than RUGL. Which, while a team tour, no real prizing there, no custom avatar doesn't get you into the RU Hall of Fame. This does. So we have a much larger player base, a lot more kind of tour players have been attracted, more teams. RUGL had an 8 team roster. I think we're at 16 for RU World Cup. Um,
Yeah. 16.
and and just like a whole lot of ADV RU to be played. So kind of what does this mean for ADV moving forward? And I've asked you this question a lot, but this really is kind of the next step in ADV's kind of development as a tier. Um, how do you see this like playing out for ADV?
Look,
Worldwide coverage, the first
oh
one. We're gonna have players from different countries trying to explore the tier, which that'll be really nice just to get a lot more people involved because we know a couple players or we have ideas on the slots that are going to be filled for some countries and regions, but for others it's going to be like we don't quite know yet. And if it's a new player, then all the better, more the merrier. Like get more people involved in the competitive RU scene.
yeah, and not gonna lie, it's just like the biggest win we got since the inception of the tier. Because even though we had a plan through like circuit and our UGL this year, we never expected to make it into a Avatar tournament. Like actually, because we understood that the tier is new, and we were creating this tier like pretty much like very much like later NU and PU and ZU creation, so we weren't expecting to make like any type of close to official state, you know? So making it to RUWC is just like unreal. It's unreal. Like even like talking about like we just made like an year, like it's an year of ADV RU, and we already achieved that. So it's like the biggest win we could have gotten.
Yeah, and you
Yeah.
can kind of see from just I've been scrolling through the thread kind of slowly, but a lot of outpouring of support, whether it be from the kind of players who were watching ADV RU or playing ADV RU and RUGL, or kind of just the tier leaders themselves. I think there was a Fiend post here also supporting it. Um, I think ADV RU in this year has done a lot, leaps and bounds in terms of like tier growth, and this really is kind of the pinnacle of it, making it into kind of a custom Abbey tournament, literally 1 year almost to the date of its creation. So, I mean, that's big ups to both of y'all, Amity and LpZ, for kind of keeping up with the tier, making sure resources have been readily available, up to date. Your enthusiasm, keeping up with it, making sure people stay engaged with the tier, and yeah, this really is kind of the big one in terms of the culmination of all that work. Um,
Yeah, I just want to give a shout out to Beraldino, because if I'm not mistaken, he brought up the possibility of ADV being WC. Like he threw the idea, and the other hosts liked the idea and wanted to see what the community would like answer to that, you know. So yeah, I just want to shout out my boy.
yeah,
It's it's so amazing seeing from what we thought was just a little passion project of Advanced RU. Oh, just we're gonna theory mon some mons. Oh, this meta looks kind of cool. We might play a couple games. Might have fun. Might do good in it. I don't know. It might be a little fun side thing. Now we're in RU World Cup. Like how the span of that happening in a year is absurd to me. I
Yeah, it's
just
insane.
it feels like yesterday I was talking with LPZ about the potential for advanced RU. Just what are we
Yeah,
gonna do for
we
it?
were like in the what if stage, right?
Yeah, we did not know the kind of precedent that would take place with Advance's inception and what that means for old gen lower tiering as a whole.
yeah, for sure. I mean, a lot of uh, yeah. I don't want to say that this is like typical of RU as a whole, but I think our community definitely has embraced this more so than even I would have thought. Just the amount of support that's up, come out from really everyone, from the managers in RUGL to the players to kind of the higher up, the leadership figures in the tier now. I mean, and again, all of that comes from kind of y'all, right? The kind of leaders of the tier who have, kept up with it and made sure that it's been a fun tier for people to play. Like if this was boring, if this was, not something people were invested in, if this was, just another tier, I mean, I really don't think it would be getting as, going all the places that it's gone. So again, one more time, just want to shout out to y'all specifically. And I mean, that kind of is where I kind of end things here. I mean, we've covered kind of the history tour wise at least, and a little bit of the metagame discussion of ADV RU from its inception last year to RU World Cup this year. Um, so I'll kind of leave these last minutes to y'all. So you have the floor to kind of talk about whatever you want as far as ADV RU and its future, or where it's come from, its past, and yeah, that's on you. Floor is yours.
I'm gonna send you something. If you could show it, like if I'm gonna send it to you on Discord DMs. If you
Oh,
could show it as a link, I'm just
sure.
gonna post a little surprise. Um, I just sent it to you. This is my current thoughts on the tier.
Okay.
It should be, you can open the link to the image.
Uh, open link. There we go.
These are my current thoughts on the meta. I think that Polyrath, maybe it's just using it a bit more. Maybe it's like actually putting in the work. But I think Polyrath is a very good mod and probably better than Polytoad. I think Polytoad's very good, but if it's I think it's mainly more of a fit on just like spike structures. You definitely still have to respect it. You need a water resist on every team, but I think Poliwrath might be looking to be the better poly in this meta. Rapidash is S because Glalie and Rapidash are basically on how many percent of teams right now? With Glalie, you can pretty much only drop it on spikeless structures, but I think that spikeless structures have a lot more potential and it's so broad and it's it's very good and worthwhile bring to load spikeless. Whereas with Rapidash, you can only really drop it on stall, which of course is stall. Maybe that's just me, uh, but I don't see myself loading stall as much as I see myself loading spikeless. So Rapidash eventually just becomes half, or if not 75% of my builder. Right now, the most versatile threat, the biggest thing to account for in the tier, I think Rapidash might be a number one for me. As far as the other things, you might see Stantler in A. While I do think Stantler is a very phenomenal breaker, I don't think it fits on as much teams as I'd want it to. Like I can fit it as a lead sometimes, but I don't see myself using it a bunch mid game because of the lack of priority compared to other mid game wall breakers, the lack of the speed bracket, which is like okay, but not completely there. But it's good. It's good. I think Honor is also A because it's mainly a needs spikes both in its breaking and like on the teams you kind of build it with. Honor needs spikes, but it's very solid mon. It holds the tier together like Hitmonchan. Uh, the A minus stuff, I think the Sun Sweepers are actually very good right now. Um, I think Meganium still belongs in A minus because the fact that it can hold spikeless structures together so well, and the fact that it can like have such a good matchup into Fat that nothing replicates Meganium's matchup into Fat like other Mons can do into Fat. Maybe besides like Vic, but or Rapidash, but Meganium is like very good. Hypno holds a lot of teams together as good glue, very versatile. That's like everything in my A tiers. As far as the lower stuff, Pikachu is in B minus. You might say,
Gotta
hey,
love it.
wait, didn't you unrank Pikachu before? Didn't you like not have it in your VRs before? I think Pikachu has a lot of potential as a lead because it beats all the water leads. It beats Stantler. It can trade well versus Hitmonchan. Well, CB-Chan kind of screws it, but if you don't load in a CB-Chan and you can tell just by early lines if it's CB-Chan or not, uh, Pika is kind of good at breaking. Uh, what else? Matang and B. I think that's what I said earlier in the vid. Like, I don't see myself using it this much as glue, and it loses to both popular weather styles in the tier right now, and Spikeless is good at accounting for Matang. But the one thing I'll give it is that it's a Sludge Bomb immune and a Toxic immune, which I think Toxic immune and Poison immune on most teams is very beneficial. Uh, because CB Vit can rip through teams otherwise, and just having an immune to it, it feels good at this point to have a good Sludge Bomb immune. What else can I say? Uh, that's pretty much it. I mean, I think I might be the only one that might put Mime this low, but I don't know. I just haven't figured out why I need to use the Mon. Maybe it has something like Encore Calm Mind for Calm Mind Hypno. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it lacks promise to me.
Here's what I'll
But
say: if Mime has a set that's capable of being broken, I feel like it'll pop up at some point in RU World Cup. People will try it if it's there.
I'm down I'm down to be proven wrong with Mime. It's just that I've tried all kinds of sets on it, like Encore Toxic, Calm Mind 3 attacks, Calm Mind Hypnosis, Dual Screens, uh, Encore Weather move. I've tried. It's just I'd rather use Hypno, and I'd rather use Bulky Raichu or Support Chew, which is a better partner in the Belly Drum Wrath. Just I don't know, man.
Word.
Maybe
Well,
it's like good into fat structures like Meganium, maybe, but Sableye kind of screws it. We figured this out like very early on in the tier that Mime is screwed by Mime is kind of screwed by bulky structures that have Shadow Ball Sableye, and into offense it's like dead weight.
word.
But yeah, these are just my thoughts on the meta. Like take it as you will with a grain of salt. I don't want to make my opinion like come off as fact. It's just my thoughts on the meta at large right now,
Yeah.
especially considering all the developments that have been happening in the Open Tour and going into RU World Cup. I think, yeah, the tier's in a good spot right now. I think Weather helped carve a good identity for the meta, and I think it helps Weather being like this prominent, and especially Sun and Brain alike. I think it helps it carve out a place among all other advanced tiers. Like they're not as integral to the tier as in advanced RU. Like uh OU is sand, Ubers that's like perma sun, perma rain, and sure, but advanced RU among like the lower tiers, it I think it's very unique, and I think that it's one of the best advanced tiers that I've come to know since it is my child, and I will care for it like one. I guess that's basically about all I have to say with the meta. Long live Advanced RU.
Long live ADV. LpZ, how about you? Some final kind of closing thoughts before we shove off.
Well, before about the tier list, like I agree on most stuff there. Of course, a couple disagrees, like here and there, but at least I don't think I would like rise or drop anything like two sub ranks, so it's close enough. But I don't want to like keep anything for granted just yet because of our UWC. So just not to hide any thought, but I'm sure there's gonna be like some like good development during the tour. So
Mm-hmm.
uh, I think I will keep my thoughts for later, and I'm definitely gonna post something about it, like after the tour. But right now, it's about what Amity has said. Like, I don't have too many differences here.
Okay. Well, what about just like in general about kind of ADV? Any like kind of closing comments y'all have to the ADV community?
Well, I just want to thank everyone, like that has played, the community, the RU community, the ADV community, like that helped us reaching in such a stage. Because as I said, I never like believed, like I'm being honest here. I never believed we would be, take part on a Casanevi tour. So yeah, and was like only possible due to how much the player base contributed. So I just want to thank to everyone. I already shout out my boy Brodinho, so I don't need to do that again. And I think I also want to shout out our concert, QB, Tech, Faliburn, BFM. I just want to send them a shout out for helping us like all this time because they have been constant since the kickoff tour. As soon as the kickoff tour ended, we like got Tech, QB, and Faliburn with us, and since then they have been part of the team. So yeah, I just want to thank them as well.
Go.
I think
Well,
I want to give the same shout outs, and I also want to shout out to a lot of the players that also helped the community grow. Uh, C, Super Epic Amphros, big shout outs to her. I think that her contributions to the tier really helped push the tier to newer heights, and I think that was the push that we were like all looking for the tier for so long, just to get a fresh perspective from a lot of the players in RUGL, especially a big shout out to Spoiled Berries for being good sport, helping innovate a lot of things. Um, Shout outs to a bunch of other players that are playing the tier. I'm so thankful that our tier is getting played to this much, and especially for RU World Cup. I'm glad that something that started out so humble turned out into a custom Abbey tour. So big shout outs to the people that made that possible, the RE community, to the advanced community for helping support yet another advanced lower tier success, because advanced lower tiers are very good, and I'm glad that a lot of support is being given to them and that the advanced community is really, really liking it. Um, that's about all the shout outs I have to give. Shout out to my mom for bringing me here.
you love to hear it. Okay. Well, with that, I mean, that's kind of everything we got. Shout outs to you both. Thank you both for taking kind of the time out of your day to kind of sit down and kind of go through a little walk down memory lane with me. It's been fun, especially as someone who hasn't been here since the inception of the tier to kind of hear a little bit more about the quote unquote history. It's only been a year, but history is history. So yeah, thanks to both of y'all. You've done fantastic work thus far, and I think a lot of people have kind of seen that for what it is, and are kind of expectant, waiting on seeing what bigger and better things will be going on in the future. But with that, thank you to again. Thank you to all of our viewers who have kind of um, tuned in to this hour and 45, hour and 50-minute long video. I hope you enjoyed it. Hit the like, hit the subscribe, all of that good stuff. You already know the drill. So with that, peace.
See ya.
Also check DPPRU.
Check DPBRU.